So I was coming back from work and I was browsing around on YouTube, checking up on, my peoples and checking up on some channels I'm subscribed to see if there's any new videos or any new developments or anything. And I came across my boy Atma's video. Um, so this is basically a video response to the video that he made. How did I become a gamer? And I wanted to Well, I don't want to segue off of anything really. I mean, if you want to see the video, I'll have the link under my video, so you can go over there and see it for yourself. And I also want to give my story on how also became a gamer. And what led me down this path, and what was the root of it all and everything else. And I also wanted to, give my little, not 2 cents, I'd say like 1 cent on the whole on the whole new generation of gamers, and how they're being portrayed in the mainstream and all that stuff, you know. But I might just put in 1 cent. I'm not gonna put in 2 cents or anything like that because I'm still kind of new at this. So yeah. And considering the content of what I'm about to talk about, or what I'm about to say, no, what I'm about to talk about, yeah, it's gonna be a long ass video, so I suggest you just get comfortable and strap yourself in. Uh oh, I'm plugging my shit. I'm unplugging my shit. All right, and I figure why not do it, while I'm playing Fate Stay Night. So I guess I should also begin from the beginning. You know, Ironically enough, he started off in 1989, and I'm like, damn, that's the same fucking year I was born. So how would it make me sound if I were to say the same year? It almost like as if I'm copying him or something. But yeah, so my path into gaming is is also a bit peculiar, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying it's anything special, but it's like it's nothing as generic as all the other stories that I've heard. Like, oh, I was staying in such and such a place, and and I happened to come across such and such system, and that's pretty much what got me on the path, right? That's usually like the generic way to go. But with him, with Atma, he actually dived into his personal life of what he went through and everything else, which I think is actually a lot more better. I think a lot of people should like share their stories a bit more, but not many people want to do that because they had like a lot of dark shit going on that they don't want to share, and the same goes for me. And not a lot of people want to be open about it. But me on the other hand, I have no problem, being open about it because it's the reality. Ain't really much you can do. Uh, yeah, did I do that right? Yeah, that's what I wanted. Yeah, I fucked up, and my dumbass, I was recording like 3 recordings ago before this, and my dumbass saved over my own shit. So now I gotta start all over again. Yay. But anyway, I'm deviating here. But yeah, so how exactly did I get into gaming? Well, let's fast forward. No, fast ain't no fast forward. Let's go backwards. I can't read any of this shit. But yeah, how exactly did I get into gaming? Well, let's start from 1989, from when I first, was a little fucking squirt. Actually, no, let's just start from when I was 6. How about that? So, I'm 6 years old, you know, and as far as my parents are concerned, they weren't no longer together, right? They were around that time they hated each other's guts. You know what I mean? And I was mostly staying with my mom, while my mom was staying with her teacher. And my mom is not exactly the kind of person that should be having kids. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. Oh, I gotta go back. I'm not really necessarily saying that as a bad thing. You know, it's not like she was a fucking, tyrant or anything. It has nothing to do with that. It's just she she doesn't really have the mental capacity or the patience to take care of a kid. And like it's more than just that. It was mainly just the financial issue, that comes along with having kids and everything else. Damn it, I keep pressing X. See, with these Japanese games, you gotta press O instead of X because I don't have the American version of this game. So yeah, all right. But yeah, so my mom was staying with her teacher. Not just any teacher, her grade school teacher, if you can believe that. Yeah, check that, right? Mommy staying with their teacher, you know, because she didn't have anywhere else to go. So my mom's teacher took her in, and fast forward till then, and I'm born. So one thing led to another, and my mom's teacher found that it was better for me to stay with her than to actually stay with my mom because, like, real talk, my family is just all over the fucking place. Like, they're just, it's a fucking nut bar, man. But it's like you can say that with anybody's family, right? It's like, oh, my family, man, they're crazy, and shit like that. But it was just in my case, it was more so because I'm a fucking kid growing up in the inner city of Chicago, right? Especially with all that fucking bullshit going on out there at the time, when the 90s was popping off, with the gang violence. That's when the gang violence was just starting to just fucking explode, and then the next thing you know, they're all on the fucking news and shit. All that shit they were talking about on the news, man, that shit they're for real. It's all true. No bullshit. Those guys are not all talk. Those guys are for real. You know. So yeah, I ended up staying with my mom's teacher instead of with my mom. At first, I was just staying with both of them, but I ended up staying with my mom's teacher as opposed to just staying with my mom. Eventually, my mom, went off to Columbus, Ohio, and I stayed in Chicago with my mom's teacher, who was my guardian, you know, or foster mom, or however you wanna put it, right? So yeah, that was pretty much the end of that little. That was pretty much the end of that little story arc. You know what I mean? So I'm a 6-year old kid. Just turned 20. Just turned 6, right? And it's like, oh well, TDS, where's all this going? Don't worry, I'm fucking getting to it. Don't worry about it. So I turned 6 years old, and my foster mom bought me a game system. She went to the store, bought me a game system. At the time, I didn't know what it was because it was all wrapped up, and I was like, oh shit. You know, it was a big surprise, right? And then, I open it up, and it turns out to be a Sega Genesis with Sonic the Hedgehog, the first one, right? I forgot which Sega it was. I think it was just like the actual first one. I forgot. I forgot. I think Sega came out in like what 32-bit, and then it came out in 64-bit and shit. I had the 64-bit one, or you could say like the Mega Drive or something like that. I think that's pretty much. I think that's what it was. I think it was the Mega Drive, but it was like the first Mega Drive before they remodeled it and made it into that big old box with the extra cartridge thing at the top and shit. But yeah, that I got a Sega Genesis for my birthday. And of course, the first game I had was Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, that's pretty much where it all just began. Because, like, real talk, is segueing into my personal life. I was a 6-year-old kid, man. I remember vividly, you know, not everything that happened, but just mostly everything that happened, and what I was thinking and what I was feeling, and everything else, and my outlook on life, and and all that shit. And like real talk, it wasn't very good. You know what I mean? Aside from the fact that I'm in a foster home, aside from the fact, that my mom wasn't there anymore. You know what I mean? Aside from the fact that, we had the gang problem up in Chicago and shit. So, because of that, parents, including my foster mom, was being all apprehensive about me and other kids going outside because of all the shit that was going on and shit, right? It's like, oh, stay in the house. You're like, fuck, you're staying in the house. And then, you stay in the house too long, and they're like, oh, go outside, do something with yourself. And you're like, what the fuck? You just told me to stay inside the fucking house, man. It was that kind of shit. So, alright, back on topic. So I got the Sega Genesis with Sonic the Hedgehog, right? And my outlook on life at the time was just, I wasn't really doing well in school. Technically, I mean, for me, I just wasn't doing well in school. I mean, around that time, I was in fucking kindergarten, so it was like whatever, right? But it was just, I wasn't really doing well in school. I wasn't really making any, meaningful friends. You know what I mean? I mean, I made friends there, but it's just like I didn't make, that friend that you could bring over the house and play with and go to the park with and all that stuff. I wasn't in there, because there, around that time when I first went into the kindergarten class, everybody already had their little groups and everything going on, and me, I was just being left the fuck out. So I was like, like, what the fuck, man? No point in this shit. Right? So then I get the game system. And at that point, my world pretty much changed forever. Right? Because I already liked Sonic already. Like, even before I even got the system, I was already introduced to the series already when, my brother, foster brother, if you want to call him that. I don't really refer to him as my foster brother. I refer to him as my brother because 'cause we grew up together. So it's like, fuck it, right? you know, my brother, when I first met him for the first time, he had a Sega Game Gear, right? Imagine that, seeing like the first game system you see is a Sega Game Gear. And I'm seeing this shit, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, it was on some futuristic type shit. I'm like, holy shit, you get to you get to not only play the damn game, but you get to take it everywhere you go and shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was just fucking blown the fuck away. And of course, the first game that I saw on there was a game that he owned, Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, and I knew about Sonic from watching the fucking cartoon. You know, not many people know about the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon that came on back then. I'm pretty sure most people would know about, you know, the Sonic the Hedgehog Well, it was called Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, right? And the voice actor was I forgot the guy's name, but he plays Steve Urkel in Family Matters and shit. Yeah, so yeah, I already knew about Sonic beforehand. You know, like he was pretty much one of my favorite characters in line with the Looney Tunes and all that shit. And all that crap, right? So I already knew about Sonic beforehand. So I saw the Sega Game Gear. He had Sonic. I played the shit. Like it was like the best. Like it was Sonic 2. It was Sonic 2 for the Sega Game Gear, right? So I'm playing that shit. And I'm just like fucking blown the fuck away because I'm like, oh my god, he's just like he was in the fucking show, right? Because, I'm over there controlling Sonic and I'm pressing the down button and then he does like his little fucking somersault thing, right? Breaking down walls and shit. What the fuck did I just do? Oh god, now I gotta do this shit all over. Fuck my life. But yeah, so I was just fucking like I was just mind fucked, right? And then I finally get the system, and the first game I get is Sonic the Hedgehog, the first one, right? Which was like fucking crazy, because my foster mom, she was like she was an old woman, okay? She wasn't really all that, she wasn't really there to the point where she needed to go to the nursing home or anything. But she was getting along in years. So of course she didn't of course she didn't know anything about video games or anything like that because that wasn't her generation. But in the end, the first game she buys me is of course that. And I think I think what happened is that she went inside the game store and the game teller was showing her the games and shit, and like she just chose that one because she must because she was around when my brother was around. When we were both playing the Sega Game Gear and shit. And around that time I was being like a little fucking asshole because here I am wanting to play the game and it's his shit. So I'm over there just being a little fucking prick, going over there crying to my father, well, he won't let me play the game, and then like she ends up fucking scolding, end up giving him hell, man. Like it was that kind of shit, and I was doing it on purpose because I knew I could get away with it. But that was neither here nor there. But I think from that she determined that I would actually like that shit, and I did. So I got the game. I'm playing the shit, and I was like, my world just changed forever, dog. I mean, just from the moment I inserted it in the cartridge, from the moment I turned on the system, from the moment that I saw the title screen, I was like, holy shit. You know what I mean? And then, you press start, and then you go over there to the Green Hill Zone, and it's playing that memorable ass soundtrack that'll forever be embedded within the crevices of not only my mind, but gamers in my age bracket, 90s, right? But yeah. And I couldn't beat Robotnik for shit. You know what I mean? I couldn't figure it out. I think it took me till I was like fucking 7 or something till I finally figured out how to beat that shit. You know, 'cause I was having really bad trouble with it. I think I was stuck on the first stage for months, damn near a year, until I finally turned 7, and then I was finally able to fucking figure it out and beat that shit. That shit used to make me so fucking mad, dog. I used to throw my fucking controller, punch the fucking television screen. Oh yeah, yeah. The you know, it was bad. I mean, it wasn't that bad. I didn't break anything. It was just I was just so fucking mad I couldn't pass it. But yeah, that's pretty much where it began for me. You know, so I had Sonic and I had Street Fighter 2. I get started off with just those two games, right? And since I couldn't beat Sonic, I would try to beat Street Fighter. Yeah, that shit didn't go so well either. Cause I couldn't do the Hadouken, I couldn't do all the advanced moves. The only thing I could do was just punch and kick, and just hope for the best. Just hope for the fucking best, right? So yeah, that pretty much covers when I was 6, right? Because I wasn't really doing all that well in school, like I said before, and I didn't really have any motivation, But thanks to my mom buying the game system, it finally gave me some motivation to actually continue. Because I was like, yo, if I go to school, be good, do my fucking schoolwork, you know, do my fucking homework and just get it done, I'll be back on the game again. 'Cause that was my whole motivation for doing it. Real talk. I didn't have any, freaking aspirations or anything. Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a pilot. I want to be a fighter. And then you get over there to me, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to be. Like I was, it was that kind of shit. But yeah, that pretty much covers from when I was 6, right? And then you fast forward to when I get to the 3rd grade. I think I still had the same games, right? Yeah, I still, for the most part, I still had the same games. And the games were starting to get were starting to get in the way because I was actually supposed to be doing some real work, and I was, just oh, this bitch. Oh well, oh, okay, okay. I see. I see Miss Goldilocks means business, so I'm finna give it to her. I was mostly just playing with my eyes closed here, but now I'm just finna fucking kill you. Alright, stay down, bitch. But yeah, so fast forward to the 3rd grade, and the games were just starting to get in the way. So then in comes the punishments. Oh, you ain't doing your schoolwork, you're not doing your homework, your game will be taken away until further notice. So I'm like, oh my fuck, right? And then I finally get my shit together, and I'm like, okay, I'll do the homework, I'll do everything I need to fucking do, so you adults can get off my fucking back, and I can get back on my fucking game. Because that's how I felt at the time. I didn't really care. I mean, if you really want to nail it all down to how I really felt, that's how I really felt. I didn't give a shit. But, and I know it's making it sound as if I was a fucking asshole. I wasn't. It's just, like I said, I'm in a foster home. I'm brought into a situation that's unfamiliar to me, and I already got to deal with enough shit at school, dealing with my male peers, dealing with my female peers, especially the female peers, right? And all the social issues, and all the social cues and all that stuff that you gotta fucking learn. Like it was just too much for me. It was just too much for me to handle. Like it really was, because they're being told one thing and then it turns out to be another thing. It's just one big, it's just one big clusterfuck that I just didn't have control over. And me playing the video games actually made me feel as if I had control. And for the most part, it did help. It did help. But But yeah, so so the punishments are coming, and I had to get my shit together. And once I started doing that, the game, I finally get my game back, right? And this was like an off and on thing for years, you know. And of course, I didn't get any new games. I always had the Sega Genesis. But during that course of time, I would be outside playing around, and I come across some kids that have game systems at home. You know, one of the ones I've seen was, of course, the Super Nintendo. Well, the Nintendo first, then the Super Nintendo, right? I didn't really play many games on there because it wasn't my games, obviously. I started off with Mario, and then of course, it upgraded to Super Mario, and then it was Yoshi. No Kirby. Weirdly enough, there was no. Well, actually, not weirdly enough, because I mean, you're in the hood, man. Ain't nobody fuck with Kirby around that time. But, but yeah. So it started off with Mario, then Super Mario, and I wanted to play Doctor Mario, but I remember asking, and I was told no. So that was like the end of that little story. So fast forward till the PlayStation era, right? PlayStation comes out. Oh my God, the fucking, the fucking hype around PlayStation. The groundbreaking, games that came out around the time for PlayStation. It was just PlayStation, PlayStation, PlayStation. Every other game was practically obsolete. But you know what? I sort of fast forward there, and I forgot to mention Super Nintendo. I mean, not Nintendo, but Nintendo 64. Yeah, I actually got. I didn't experience that till later. That's why I'm sort of kind of fast forwarding in the PlayStation now, because I did know about Nintendo 64, and I did want a Nintendo 64, but my foster mom wasn't going to come out of pocket for that, so the only thing I could do is just watch from the sidelines. Watch everybody else play Super Nintendo and everything else. My brother had the Nintendo 64, and he had GoldenEye, which I sucked at. I mean, I still suck, even to this day. I think it's because of GoldenEye that I just didn't really jive well with shooters all like that, because I just kept getting my ass kicked. And it wasn't like in a fun way either, like it was more of a I wanted to win, but I couldn't win. And it looked simple enough because, it's a fucking shooting game. You just point and shoot, right? Point and shoot. But, it just wasn't cutting it. I kept getting my ass kicked in the shit, so I was like, oh man, I don't want to play this shit anymore. So yeah, I didn't really jive too well with first person shooters. I mean, like there were times when GoldenEye was fun, especially when we get the mines and everything, and I try to set up my little traps. But after a while, it just got annoying because my brother, who was really, really good at the game, managed to, neutralize my traps and pretty much see through my plan and pretty much just shoot me down every single time. And I'm just like, oh God, I can't do this anymore. So, I was pretty much done with shooters as far as GoldenEye and everything else was concerned. However, Zelda Ocarina of Time was amazing. Definitely amazing. I mean, that to me, that was like the game because I was like, yo, like you get to explore all this shit. You get to explore this really huge, vast, world where there's different creatures and different races and all that stuff. Like, I mean, and that sort of kind of segues to how I got into Japanese RPGs, which I will talk about. But I will say that Zelda Ocarina of Time gave me a good window of what it actually is. I didn't actually for the longest time, for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason I didn't classify Zelda as a Japanese RPG. I mean, because it is, but at the same time, it ain't. It's an action RPG. Yeah, it's basically what it is. But yeah, so that was my experience with Zelda. I didn't play Zelda like fully, like from start to finish or anything. I still didn't play it. Like even to this day, I still didn't play it and finish it or anything. I mostly was just watching. I was mostly just sitting on the sidelines and just watching it. And at the time, I didn't mind. Because most kids would be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna sit here and just watch you play this. What the fuck? This is boring." No, me, I wasn't that kind of kid, man. If you're playing a game that has a really good story and has a really good plot, and it's an actual adventure, yeah, I'm gonna sit there and fucking watch. You kidding me? Because the way I saw it at the time was that okay, you gonna play this shit. I'll just I'll help you with I'll help you. I'll look around and see what the hell you probably missed. You know what I mean? I'll read the texts. I'll read whatever needs to be read. And see if there's anything that we missed because like I said, wasn't really all that good in school. Was a beast at reading. I'm still decent at reading but terrible at math. I was just completely terrible with math. Like it was just like, oh god. I mean, I understood, the whole concept of, hey, you got to learn how to count, right? But it was just like all this other extra shit that has nothing to do with what the fuck I was doing. It had nothing to do with my interests in the least. And it was just like for me, it was just a bunch of useless data that people were trying to force down my damn brain. That's just how I fucking saw the shit. You know. But, of course that changed. Of course that was changing over time with all the games I was exposed to because that also deals with number crunching and, and everything else somewhat. Damn it, man. Berserker is just kicking my ass. I'm probably going to be stuck on him for a while. But I mean, I am talking and playing this game at the same time. Shit, man. Berserker. Big boy, big man. Shit. I mean, in case of you haven't seen the series, man, I'm letting you know right now. The Berserker is just like beyond broken. It's like he's the furthest thing from fair. Like seriously. Hopefully I can kill his ass with my noble phantasm. That doesn't look like that's gonna happen. I just can't. Shit. Oh, I'm gonna continue talking in a moment. It's just I gotta win against this guy. I have to. And like, oh god, fighting this guy is a pain, and that's not even including the final boss or caster. Like Jesus Christ. If this don't work out, I'll just play as somebody else and just not even just try to struggle with him. But anyway, back to my conversation. So, oh, where the fuck was I at? Yeah, so yeah, um, yeah, so like I said, I was good at reading, terrible at math, um, and since the games that I was exposed to at the time required that you had to read, it was a lot more easier for me, and it was a lot more interactive. It was like to me, having those type of experiences where I'm just sitting down watching someone play an adventure game, and we're both just like it's like we're both taking this journey together. Like it's not just a one man experience. You know what I mean? Like it was actually a lot more interactive than anything school could ever teach me at that point in time. Because not to not to go off topic here, but Chicago public schools at the time were just really doing like terrible. Especially with all the fucking uh you know funds being sucked out and everything else, with all the issues that was going on up in Illinois and all that. But yeah, so Zelda definitely was I guess it was my gateway. It was my gateway. You know what I mean? And that was pretty much the entire Nintendo 64 experience I've ever had, aside from Pokemon and all that, because we had Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2, and I wasn't really that much of a huge Pokemon fan. I was a fan of the show. You know what I'm saying? I was definitely a fan of the show, which made it a lot easier for me to get into Japanese RPGs and Japanese games and all that stuff, Japanese adventure games, platformers, etc., etc., etc. Right? Loved the show. Wasn't really much of a fan, enough to where I wanted to, get the games, collect the cards, um, and train and grind the Pokemon and all that. Like I wasn't that much of a damn fan, but I was pretty much a fan enough to where I would play it, just for the challenge. But my brother had better Pokemon than I did, and but it's like again, I didn't even start on it. So how could I start on something? How could I beat someone that has way more experience than I do? It's not gonna work. But yeah, that was pretty much my end of the Nintendo 64 era, as I knew it. So never owned one, and that was pretty much it. So now we fast forward into the PlayStation era. And that's when things just started to really just kick the fuck off for me, because all this PlayStation hype. Yeah, I wanted a PlayStation. Was I gonna get one? No, of course not. Of course I wasn't gonna fucking get one. Of course not, man. But luckily my brother had my brother had one. So, it was sort of kind of like one of those things where I'm just like, you know what? I don't even need a PlayStation at this point. Well, what was the point when I always went to my brother's house? Not every day, but every once in a while, and I would stay there a while, and then I'll be going right back home again. So, PlayStation comes out. My brother has it, and you know, oh, this fucker, I'm never gonna beat him. I'm just gonna play as someone else. Oh yeah, why not? Play with Ren and get my ass kicked even worse. Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not? Fuck it. Uh, so yeah, he gets a PlayStation, and of course I'm just like jealous. I'm like, oh man, I want a PlayStation, man. Right? But that's neither here nor there. So I remember vividly what I experienced on the PlayStation. So first thing was, I remember there was a demo that he had. Forgot the name of it, but it had a couple of games in there. It had Rayman 2, right? Oh wow, it actually let me fight Berserk with Ren. What the fuck? Oh, okay, whatever, man, whatever. But yeah, that demo had Rayman 2, and it had Musashi. Like yeah, it had yeah, no, actually yeah, it had Rayman 2, it had Musashi, the brave fencer Musashi, and it also had Crash and the rapping the Paparappa rapper. Yeah, that was pretty much all the games it had. It didn't have anything. Oh, and it also had like a robot game. I forgot what the fuck it was called. pretty sure somebody would know what I'm talking about. I think it was called like F-Zero or something. No, Armor Core. Armor Core is what it was. So I played. I didn't play. I tried to play Rayman. And I got my ass kicked in that because it was like a 3D platformer, and of course with me not owning any 3D games at all, I keep in mind, people, keep in mind, I still only had the Sega Genesis. Even during the PlayStation era, I didn't have any other games after that. I only increased my collection of Sega games every so often. Because to clarify, the collection of games that I had on the Sega Genesis was Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. But I didn't, my foster mom didn't buy that. I actually, like my foster mom's friend's son had it, and I was watching them play it, and I was just like, my mind was blown because I was like, oh my god, Sonic 2, right? And around that time, they were actually playing it, in full. But then, fast forward like a year or two later, and they just forgot about it. Then I went over there to their house and saw the black cartridge because it didn't have the title, thing on it. It was just a pure black cartridge. And I remember just risking it all and just being like, "Hey man, can I have this?" And they're like, "Huh? Have what? Sonic 2." I'm like, "Oh man, that doesn't work anymore." You can have it. I'm like, "Really? Thank you. Oh my god." And I'm taking it home and shit. And yeah, funny story with that. So I'm taking it home and I put it inside my fucking system and it doesn't work. Like it literally does not work. It actually works, but at the first few times I'm fucking trying the shit, it doesn't work. And I'm trying everything. I'm blowing inside of the fucking cartridge, cleaning it out as best I could, and just trying it over and over again. I think I tried a total of 12 times, if I'm not mistaken, until it finally decided to work. And then since then, I just didn't even turn the system off. I was afraid, man. I was about to be like, oh my god, this shit ain't gonna work anymore, and all that shit. And then I finally get to playing Sonic 2, best experience of my fucking life. Cause I was in second grade at the time, so that was around the time when I was really cutting the fuck up. And I was just cutting up, man. I just didn't give no fucks whatsoever, because I kept getting fucked with. And on top of that, I had a crush, and that shit didn't work out. So I was like, oh my god, fuck all this shit, right? So once again, it came back to the same shit. Get your act together, stop acting up in school, and I'll give you your fucking game back. It was back to that shit off and on. But yeah, I enjoyed Sonic 2 a lot. It was definitely a good ass adventure. Man, love that game, love it. That it was because it was my first legitimate sequel of a game. So I was like, yo, yay! And yeah, it took me a year or two to beat it because it was like it was hard. It was really fucking hard, man. Especially at the final stage where you ain't got no rings and shit. It's like fuck, man. Like really, game. So fucking dickish. But yeah. And what else? Oh yeah, and Sonic 3. Funny story with that. I actually got that shit from a fucking crackhead. Yeah, can you believe that? Fucking crackhead was selling like an entire trash bag full of games, right? He had fucking he had a whole bunch of fucking games, dog. He was selling that shit for I think like $5. Yeah, like $5 each, or I think it was either $3 or $5 each, right? And Sonic 3 was among them, and I wanted that shit. So I think I ended up buying not the whole trash bag full of games, but at least like the first trash bag of games that he had. Like I ended up buying the whole fucking bag, though. I didn't buy it. My foster mom bought the shit, you know. And that it was like, yo, my entire gaming experience was lit from then on out. Cause I ended up getting Sonic 3, which of course I played and enjoyed. The first stage Second act, we were pretty much gave me an indication that my gaming experience was gonna be lit. You know what I'm saying? If you ever play Sonic 3, you know what I'm talking about with the fucking, machine burning the whole forest down and shit. Not never mind the fact that before all that, you fight the machine and it's playing some freaking Michael Jackson music, right? Come to find out, Sonic 3 was actually like the whole entire soundtrack was composed by Michael Jackson himself, which I was surprised about. I'm like, wait, that's why it sounds like that. But then you go back and then you listen to the music, you're like, holy fucking shit, it really is MJ. It really is fucking MJ. You know, like it's fucking crazy shit. But yeah, so I had Sonic 3, and then I had another game called Splatterhouse 2. And I'm pretty sure some people would know what I'm talking about. Splatterhouse, the Splatterhouse series and shit. I had the second game, right? Talk about some scary shit, man. That game, man. Aside from it being hard as all fucking shit, I'll definitely do an LP of that game. There's no doubt about it. But that game was fucking hard. Yeah. Aside from that game being fucking hard, it was some scary shit, man. I ended up seeing some horrific things I could not unsee, like real talk. But it was a good kind of scary experience. It wasn't nothing like mentally traumatizing or anything. It was just one of those scary moments that you just treasure for the rest of your life, and you're just like, oh my god, I was really scared of that. Oh my god, you remember that, man? Oh my god. You know, fucking nostalgia just starts, just raining over you like like a waterfall. But yeah, I ended up having that, and I also had like this fucking Paperboy game. Like I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. That fucking Paperboy, the fucking Paperboy game that was out on the Sega Genesis and shit. Where you gotta go, where you're this fucking paper boy, and you gotta deliver the papers over there to everyone's houses and shit. And like the whole thing is that you gotta shoot the fucking paper in the neighborhood like correctly. You can't crash it through windows or anything. Well, no, you just gotta watch out for fucking obstacles and shit. Fucking cats and dogs and cars and people walking by on the street. Yeah, like it's an automatic game over if you get hit by any of that shit. And like it was like that was by far the most frustrating game I ever played in my life. But yeah, so yeah, that was pretty much the end of my collection of the Sega Genesis games. I don't think I owned any games after that. So back to the PlayStation. So yeah, like I said, first experience was the demo with Musashi, Rayman, Crash, and the rapping game. And then after that, my brother got Final Fantasy VII. He was playing that first, and I ain't gonna lie, man, I wasn't really all that into it at the time. Actually, no. Here's what happened. So he ended up getting a whole shit ton of games, right? He ended up getting Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy VII, and Final Fantasy VIII, along with some other miscellaneous games like what else did he have? Because I remember what the fuck he had. Believe it or not, even after all this time, I know he's probably listening to this shit. He's like, dude, you remember all that shit? Yeah, I fucking remember all that shit, man. How the fuck could I forget? I mean, that shit shaped me who I am, But yeah, he ended up getting like a whole shit ton of games. He ended up getting Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII, and Final Fantasy Tactics, right? And also, he also had Vendel Hearts, but he didn't get that till like later. He also had like racing game and shit, but that came along with everything, you know. And I believe that was it, right? He didn't have shit else. yeah, for now, I'm just gonna say that that was it. If I remember anything else, I'll mention it. But yeah, so that kind of segues on how I got into Japanese RPGs. Now, this is well, I'm not gonna say all. This is some personal stuff for me. No, it's not, man. I mean, this is like the turning point. This is what pretty much this is what pretty much solidified my path as a gamer. You know, this is what pretty much shaped me into the person that I am. And overall, this is what pretty much gave the what do I want to say? What's the right word that I'm looking for? It gave the finishing touches to the vast imagination, the vast imagination that I've already possessed. That was already being cultivated and being, um, fine tuned as it was already. This what pretty much gave the finishing touches. You know, was those games. So, all right. So, so my brother, he moved like somewhere far away because every time they move, man, they move somewhere like fucking far away. And if you're in Chicago, you know what I'm talking about because I stayed out west, like, and he would end up moving like out north, out south, out in the fucking suburbs near fucking Evanston and all that shit, right? So he ended up moving out south to Garfield, right? And I remember this shit. So I ended up going inside of the house, right? Well, it was an apartment. Ended up going inside of the apartment, and he was telling me that he got some new games. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. And and he starts playing it, and one of them was Final Fantasy Tactics. That was the first thing I saw. And my first impressions of it was that it was just fucking boring, and I didn't want to. Like keep in mind, this is just my first impressions. I didn't realize the greatness that is Japanese RPGs until later exposure. But so he's playing Final Fantasy Tactics, and I'm looking at it, and the first thing I'm thinking is just like, oh man, this is some boring shit. I just don't see how you can get into this type of game. You're not doing anything. The characters are not moving around. They're not jumping. They're not dodging. They're not, going fisticuffs. Oh god, it's Gilgamesh. Fuck my life. But like they're not doing anything. It's like, what are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? So the more I watched, the more I started to understand. Because I was just, I'm looking at it, how Final Fantasy Tactics is. I'm like, okay, so he moved over there to one area, and now he's telling his unit or his character to stay there, and then the enemy gets a turn, and they attack one of your units, and he's not dead yet, and then one of them casts some magic and shit, and then when they start casting the magic, that's when the light show begins, right? Because I'm like, I'm looking at this shit. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. All right, here we go. He's doing something. And then I'm seeing Shiva and Ifrit, and or like the animation sequence for the spell. And I'm like, okay, But it was like, like, man, this is the same shit. Like, I'm not into this. Like, can we play something else? That was my whole attitude at the time. That was my whole attitude with Tactics. So then he moved on to 7. And I was, then it got better. I was like, oh, okay, now here we go. Here we go. Now we're talking, right? And my brother was a huge fan of, probably still is a fan today of the main antagonist of Final Fantasy VII, right? Fucking Sephiroth with a huge, really, really long, fuck you sword, and shit, right? Oh, and wrestling. Yeah, just a little tidbit there. He also had wrestling. Lots of wrestling games on the PlayStation and 64 too, and a lot of them we did play. You know, A lot of them we did play. Now, me, my ass, I didn't know how to play for shit. I tried my best. You know, but I played along just for the sake of fun of it. You know what I mean? But, all right, back to what I was talking about. So, he plays Final Fantasy VII, and I'm like, okay, now we're talking. And I'm actually sitting there, and I'm actually sitting through it, and I'm actually watching it, right? And then he gets, and then he finally gets over there to the final boss and shit, right? And then it's playing that music that we all know from Final Fantasy VII, right? The fucking, all the opera shit. And, I thought that shit was just fucking amazing, right? Cause I'm watching him play, and I'm like, oh my god, are we really going up against God right now? Like, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, what? Like, we're really going up against God, man? And, you see like this big majestic being just, and then he does like his fucking ultimate move, the supernova, which is by far the longest attack sequence I've ever seen in a freaking well, not in a video game, but like in a freaking RPG period. Because I'm like, god damn, like, if you've seen Supernova, you know what I'm talking about. Like, the whole universe ends in just one move, and I'm like, wait, you survived all that shit? Get out of here! The fuck out of here, man! But here's the problem that I had with 7. One, I didn't, my brother didn't play it in the beginning. Like when I was there, like whenever I wasn't there, he had the full experience of the game, and I didn't. Oh, fucking Gilgamesh just stepping on my chest as if I'm just a piece of shit. But, but yeah, that was my problem with 7. So I didn't get the full experience of the game. I would always catch him right when he was in the middle or near the end, and then at that time he beat it, right? And around that time he was just grinding for extra stuff like beating the ultimate weapon, the optional bosses, and all that stuff. So I didn't really get the full experience of the game. Therefore, I didn't really know the storyline or any of the characters. There was a few characters that I did like and I wanted to see in action, but he always stuck with his main group, right? And on a side note, Tifa Lockhart, I had the biggest crush on that chick for the longest. Like, when I saw the strategy guide and I saw her actual character portrait of what she was looking like and everything, and I saw them big, huge melons, I was like, ooh, God. My perverted ass, I was just I didn't give a fuck. I was like, yo, damn it, just stomping on my life here, Gilgamesh. That hurts, man. Yeah, I know you don't care. Like, to me, I'm just a piece of crap. But I need to win, man. I need to win. I'll do it in my school uniform if I fucking have to. I don't care. Look at him just looking down at me as if I'm just a fly. God. Anyway. So So yeah, I didn't get the full experience of the game. Therefore, I wasn't really personally invested in it all like that. I really wasn't. I wanted to. It's just that I would always catch him playing it at the worst of times. And plus, he already beat the game anyway. So it was just coming to a point where he was just getting tired of it. He was just getting completely tired of it. And then he wanted to move on to better, to another game. Which is perfectly understandable. Perfectly understood that. My God. Oh, I'm gonna kick your ass, man. he would do this right before I hit the ground too. But yeah, so that was pretty much the end of my experience for Final Fantasy VII. You know, I still don't know the full scope of the story. I still don't know what went down in the game. I only know just the important parts. You know, Aerith dying, the antagonist losing his mind. Um, what was at stake somewhat. You know, I only understood that, but anything in between that, anything in the beginning, the motivation of the character, the protagonist, and everything else, I didn't get the full experience of that. I still don't know the full experience of that, even though I'm just getting bits and pieces now. You know, so I'll wait till the remake is done, and then I'll see for, I'll be able to experience it for myself as it was intended. And another thing that kind of turned me off from it was the graphics. I mean, the characters were just looking blocky as all get out. I mean, just the blockiest I've seen. It was just the kind of blockiness that just turned me off. And I was like, oh, God, no. Can't deal with it. You know? And then, like, it wasn't for overall. Like, it wasn't overall for the game. It was just, you know how in Japanese RPGs, especially the ones from back then, they always had, like, the in battle graphics being upped, but the like the hub world graphics like toned down. You know, the character designs being more simplified. Only in this case, it was lazily so. You know, and like the hub world graphics and stuff, it was terrible. I mean, the characters looked all blocky. They looked like Lego's characters and shit. You know what I'm talking about. Like, it was just stupid. I just couldn't deal with it. It was just too much of an issue even for me. I was like, "Oh my god, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it." For some reason, I can tolerate it with Legaia, but I couldn't tolerate it with you know, with Final Fantasy 7. I just couldn't do it, man. I just couldn't do it. So that was pretty much the end of my experience with Final Fantasy VII, and then we move on to Final Fantasy VIII. Now, that right there is like that right there is that game, man. That game was like pretty much it was pretty much the creme de la creme. That I mean, I know I said that 7, 8, and Tactics were like what solidified me to become a fan, but Final Fantasy Tactics was just what I experienced first, and 7 was what I experienced second, and 8 is what I experienced the third for the final time. And out of all those two games, 8 pretty much won it for me. Like it got me hooked. You know what I mean? Ever since I experienced Final Fantasy 8, I was pretty much done. I pretty much was open minded to any Japanese RPG I came across, and I didn't, underestimate it by any means. I didn't take it at face value. I pretty much saw value within every single Japanese RPG I came across. Like, even if it looked bad, I was like, nope, I'm not buying it even for a second. I'm gonna give it a chance, and I'm gonna see what happens. And it for the most part, I never got disappointed. In my entire experience playing Japanese RPGs, I never got disappointed, even ever. I only got disappointed maybe probably once or twice. Like literally. Oh my god. Am I gonna win? Yes! Fucking hell. But yeah. Um so Final Fantasy 8. Dude. Where do I even begin? I mean, I might need to make a separate video just from that alone. But where are we at right now? We're at We're at 60 seconds. God damn, man, we're already at an hour. You know, like I said, man, I said this video was gonna be long, so you know, you were warned. Now, we're pretty much reaching the end of it anyway, but yeah. So, Final Fantasy VIII. Where should I even begin? Okay, well, like I said, if when you look at the experiences that I've had so far with other Japanese RPG games like Zelda and Tactics and Seven, and oh, and also Vendel Hearts too. I remember seeing that. Now that I did like, I did like Vendel Hearts. Vendel Hearts was pretty good. I did understand, for my age, I did understand what was going on, and I did understand what was at stake. And I did. The only thing I just didn't understand at the time was the different characters. I was kind of confused on that. But other than that, I was still invested in it because we were playing it, and like real talk, the game is hard. Like the game is hard, man. Vendor Hearts is so hard. It is nightmare. Like it's just nightmare. What? It is frighteningly hard. Vendor Hearts. It really is. We only made it to like one of the major bosses in the game, and that's just pretty much as far as we gotten. Like we didn't continue. We didn't make it any farther than that. I think we pretty much got stuck where I'm stuck at right now at the prison level. But that's neither here nor there. So in between Tactics and Seven, Vendor Hearts did did pique my interest by a lot. Because I was like, okay, because after I experienced Vendor Hearts, that pretty much solidified my understanding as to why my brother was into Tactics, which meant that when he played it again, I understood exactly I understood the rules. I knew exactly what was going on and how the game was played and what needed to be done. You know, Once I understood that, I started liking it even more. So I wasn't really harping on it like I was before. In fact, I was actually more invested in it than ever before, even though I wasn't playing it. Once again, was not playing it. I only played it like every once in a while. Little skirmish battles and all that stuff, and that was it. I never went through the actual game myself. Still haven't went through it, but I understood it finally. So, yeah. So, all right, back to eight. You know. So, okay. I don't know what the heck was going on with me in my personal life at the time. I think it was just the same old shit because we stayed at the same house. We never moved for like years. You know what I mean? So, and also, if I remember correctly, I think no. Yeah, my brother did move up north because there was a time where he moved in our apartment because my foster mom was the landlord of that apartment. So we had a lot of tenants, and he was one of them. But that's neither here nor there. So Final Fantasy VIII, my brother puts it in, and I'm looking at the case, and I was there was something about it. I was just captivated by it. The white casing, okay, the antagonist in the background looking all majestic and godly looking. The art, okay, like the casing, like the overall title, the picture title and everything else, and as well as the shit that was on the back. It was definitely more appealing to what I was seeing with Seven, because with Seven you just saw Cloud with his big Buster Sword, and then you see like the mechanical city and all that stuff. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, yo, yeah, this is what should be showing, but instead we're getting this in game, right? So I was like, man, like this, like it's such a shame too. But with 8, it wasn't like that. I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, okay. It seems like something. This seems much more better, right? And I was correct. I was correct in my assessment. So to go to pretty much just break it all down. So he puts the game in, and the game starts, right? And you go over there to the title screen, and then he presses new game, right? And it was at that point that my mind was just complete, like my mind, like my entire consciousness was just in was just enthralled in that game. From the opening sequence to that OST that was playing. I forgot what was it called? Vinosec. Yeah, it was called Vinosec. The orchestrational piece that was playing when the game actually starts. You know, and then at that point, I was just fucking floored, man. The graphics that was being shown at the time, the music that was playing, it was just on a whole new level. It was just on a whole new level of just like what the fuck, like it was just an entire new experience. I was just fucking captivated, and I was just enthralled. I'm sorry for pausing. But yeah, like that's just how much of an important moment it was for me. I mean, if you play Final Fantasy VIII, you know what I'm talking about. The opening sequence, the main character dueling and shit. And I'm like, bruh. And then the story begins. And, I wasn't playing. Once again, was not playing. I was just reading it. But even though I was reading it, I was just excited, man. I was just freaking excited. Cause I couldn't, like, in some aspects I couldn't even believe what the hell I was reading. Cause I was like, yo, like this is a really detailed game. Like it's really telling a legitimate story, and it's really trying to really get you into the story. Like it's trying, you can feel that. And I was, I was already sold. Damn, Lancer, why you looking like that, man? Looking pissed. He definitely wasn't looking that pissed on the show. But yeah, so and I'm reading it, and of course I if you notice, I'm trying not to spoil anything in the game for people who haven't played it. I don't even know if Atma played it or not, but I'm just gonna spoil like bits and pieces. So the game starts off with the main character inside of a hospital bed, right? And the doctor asks you, "Hey, are you okay? Is everything all right?" And at first, and I'm like, at first I was asking like, what the crap? What is he doing in a freaking hospital bed? And my brother pointed out like, oh yeah, you remember the opening sequence when he was dueling, the guy with the other gunblade and shit, and not a sword, a gunblade. And I was like, yo, gunblade? What? Wow, gunblade. Not only is it a sword, but it's a sword with a gun. I'm like, well, god damn. I was bro. I blocked. I blocked Lancer. Like, really, dude. I guess you can't block. I guess that move's unblockable. But yeah, so the doctor is asking, the main character, Squall, or I prefer to call him Leon. I call him Leon in every playthrough, or at least I name him Leon at least. And the doctor's asking him if he's okay. He's like, "Oh, my head hurts." Well, no, at that time you had a choice of saying my head hurts and or I feel dizzy, right? And that was the first thing. I'm like, wait a minute, you get to choose what you get to say. And at the time I was kind of wondering like, well, does it have any impact? But then, I thought about it, I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter if it makes an impact or not. It's just the fact that you get to choose exactly what you can say. You know, like you actually have choice. I mean, all video games give you like a certain amount of choices and stuff. It's just in this instance, with me not owning any PlayStations or Nintendo 64s at the time, with me actually seeing that, and you're like, yo, like you get to actually choose what the fuck you're gonna say, you know. And then I told my brother, I'm like, hey, choose my headache. My head hurts, right? Because I mean, it's like your head does hurt. Because I saw the scar on his face and shit. So I'm like, yeah, choose. You got a fucking headache. So then he chooses it, and then the doctor goes on to talk about that. Hey, you shouldn't really push yourself that hard. And the main character's like, "Oh yeah, well tell that to the antagonist, right? Tell that to that dick that sliced my face open, right?" So yeah, long story short, that game was pretty much the best, and well, it was pretty much one of the best experiences I've had in a Japanese RPG history. No, what I'm trying to say is that it was that pretty much was my ultimate gateway into Japanese RPGs as a whole. From the moment that the story starts, from the moment that you get into your first boss fight, playing that catchy ass music. I mean, it was like, to me, I'm a huge fan. I'm a very appreciative of the work that the game developers do, and not only just their games, but also wait, I gotta do this shit over? Ah, fuck me, man. I'm not doing this shit over. Ain't no way in hell. Um, but yeah, I was always appreciative of the work that the developers do, especially in the music. Music is a really big thing for me. You know, from the percussions, to the organ, to the orchestration of the music, to the tone that it sets, and to the message that it sends out. Like I take into account all those things. I was even, yeah, like even back then I was taking account of all those things, right? So of course, in Final Fantasy VIII, the first boss fight, the fucking OST plays, and it sounds like an actual boss fight. You know what I mean? Like, it was just pretty much at that point, I was just fucking sold. I was sold. And then to find out that the guy that you beat actually joined you later, I was like, holy fuck. Like it's just like, it just gave me those chills. Those chills that you get when that you're gonna be going on an epic adventure, and you just you're just like a fucking kid. You're just like a hyper ass kid in a fucking car seat, right? Ready to get out and go to the park or go to the fucking amusement park or some shit. Like, you just can't wait just to get out and run around and play and shit. That's just pretty much how I felt. But to be honest with you, it was actually a much more intense feeling in my case, because it was like, man, like we're always stuck in the fucking house, right? So it's like we couldn't go anywhere physically, but it's like with this, the possibilities were just endless, right? Because whenever and I'm gonna go off on a tangent here, with all the bad dark shit that happened in my life, despite all that shit, if there was one thing I could always turn to, it was always my vast imagination. My vast imagination that's been cultivated through the years of everything that everything that I've experienced, like I've talked about in this video, up until now, as far as gaming is concerned. I mean, I'm not going to get into, cartoons and TV shows and books and all that stuff. Like, that's like a whole nother that's a whole nother those are whole other topics altogether. But with all that, I always had my imagination to turn to whenever shit got rough, and it helped. You know, had it not been for that, there's no telling what could happen. There's no telling what kind of person I would be. There's no telling what kind of um, there's no telling what kind of behaviors I would have. You know, I'm going to use a quote that one of my not one of my subscribers, but one of this guy that I listen to on YouTube would say. This is basically just simple math of a person. Your environment dictates your environment. What did he say? He said your your environment defines your conditions. Your conditions define your experiences. Your experiences define your mode of thought, and your mode of thought defines your behavior. Right. So and I'll say it again. Your environment defines your conditions. Your conditions define your experiences. Your experiences define your mode of thought, and your mode of thought defines your behavior. So if you were to look at my environment, Chicago, Illinois, inner city, right? You already know what the fuck that shit comes with, right? You know, crime, you know, prostitution, drug trafficking, gangs, you know, all that fucking uh all that fucking unpleasant shit, right? So my environment was already just like fucked. I mean, I don't want you. I want to. I'll go with Shiro or something. But so my environment fucked, right? So what about my conditions? My conditions had the potential of being fucked, right? Had I actually stayed with my biological family, it wouldn't have been good, man, because they live in like the most shittiest conditions of all, under the shittiest environment that's already shitty to begin with. So yeah, luckily, because my foster mom was kind enough to take me in and get me away from all that crap, I didn't have to experience that. Thank God, Allah, Yahweh, whoever you want to thank for that. But my conditions weren't that bad. So conditions are good. Now, experiences, they varied. My school experiences was just like it varied. You know, especially with especially with inner city kids. And the issues that come along with that, and the issues they had to come out of, and everything else, as well as black community. And this is no surprise. I tried to stay away from to shy away from this subject, but it's like I said, when it comes to controversial shit, man, I'm just in the middle of the road when it comes to this shit. It's pretty much it's pretty much no secret that the black community is just fragmented as I don't know what, right? So when you got that, and you got all the when you got all the social issues that come out of that and all that stuff, accumulate that into what I experience. Experiences could vary, you know, and experiences define your mode of thought. My mode of thought at the time was just like all over the place, but like I said, if it wasn't for my gaming experience, my mode of thought would have been something entirely different altogether. So whenever shit got bad on my end, I've always had my vast imagination to rely on whenever it came to that stuff, and it served me well. It really did serve. It really did serve me well in the end. which is why I consider it one of my greatest treasures, if nothing else. So, you know, experiences, it could vary. Experiences define your mode of thought. Like I said, my mode of thought was, it was taking blows, but it was protected. Let's just say that. And mode of thought defines your behavior, and that's a really big thing. So, with me experiencing these games and experiencing these wonderful stories of adventure, of romance and adventure, you know, and friends, comrades, goals, all that stuff, and feeling the flow of battle, you know, and applying that to the game of life, because they always tell you, oh, life isn't a game. I beg to differ. You know, and this is just my opinion, but I beg to differ. I really beg to differ. If you could apply anything that you played in a game to your real life, it could actually be beneficial to you in the end. Like for example, if you play a lot of tactical games, then if you can apply that to your life as far as making the right correct moves, thinking things through and making sure you don't fall for any of life's traps or anything like that, and making sure that you come up with countermeasures and plans beyond plans, having a plan A, plan B, plan C, already set up in place and stuff like that. Like having that does benefit you. I know that for like I feel that that's actually true. You know, especially with all the shit I had to go through, and all the pitfalls I avoided because of of all the sound decisions that I've made, right? So damn, I just really kept stalking this girl. But yeah, so so all right, so we already covered experiences, right? Like I said, it varied. Mode of thought, already covered that. Behavior, um, my behavior was was off and on. You know what I mean? Everybody has quirks, right? And everything else. I always have a quirk of mumbling to myself, right? And I know that seems weird, but like just hear me out here. I've always had this habit for as long as I can remember. And the reason why I have this habit is that when I mumble, I'm real what I'm really doing is that I'm thinking out loud. I'm having like an inner monologue in my own mind, and I'm sort of kind of verbalizing it. I'm sort of kind of subtly verbalizing it, if that makes sense. And it ends up coming off as if I'm fucking mumbling when I'm really not. I'm actually just thinking, I'm actually just deeply thinking about something, you know. That's really what it is. So my behavior varied, once again. And, what did I say? Behavior defines your no, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, that pretty much sums me up in a nutshell. Um, I ever since these experiences alone has given me a really really a really really massive lust for fantasy and adventure. With me being a Taurus and everything, Tauruses are known for you know having a fascination with art and beauty. You know, when you include that also, it makes a really nice combination. So overall, gaming has really impacted my life in many ways that I can't really thank enough. You know, even with all the dark shit that happened in my life, I was able to like get over it. Not quickly, but I was able to get over it just enough to where I'm actually just looking back on it and I accept it for what it is. And there's nothing I can really do to change it. Even though I always think back and contemplate what I could have done to change it. What better moves I could have made at the time. And then I'm always gotten to tell myself, like, man, shut the fuck up, man. Like you were a kid then. How the hell could you come up with that complex? How can you come up with a complex plan like that on the spot? Like, there's no way. And then I review, the things that I did do correctly. I'm like, you know what? I actually did pretty well in this such and such situation, all things considered. And it's like, okay, well, where did all that come from? And then once again, it goes back to the gaming. It goes back to the games that I've had and everything else. Oh, and it turns out I'm not even done. Holy fuck, man. Yeah, I might need to. I'm gonna have to make a part two to this, because that's just the games that I've experienced, but I didn't play. I didn't go into the games that I've owned. I only went so far as just the Sega, because keep in mind, I just had the fucking Sega. Every other game that I was talking about up until that point was owned by my brother. They weren't my games, but these were games that I experienced, and these games were pretty much the gateway into games that I'm into right now. Well, not today. I mean, it's like I'm too far gone at that point. I'm too far fucking gone. But that segues into the games that I own later on for myself. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm just gonna make a part two to this, and I'll just play something a bit different here, because I just completely fucked myself, like, completely. I'm gonna have to start this game over again and beat it. Well, beat it with the characters that I've beaten them with, and now I have to go through that fucking nightmare all over again. Oh boy, that's gonna be fun. But yeah, that pretty much concludes my video, and I'll see you guys later. And if you were sticking with me for this long, I commend you. I really commend you. And not only that, I also appreciate it. This was something I really wanted to get off my chest, and I couldn't really say it in the way that I wanted to say it, but it's already out there. It's already done. So I'll just leave it at that. So that's my video. TDS out.